Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 2024 New Jersey International Film Festival Filmmaker Q&A series. Today we have three wonderful filmmakers, as well as one of the festival judges on hand to do a Q&A about their wonderful animated films. But before I introduce them to you, I need to let you know that the 2024 New Jersey International is in its 29th year. I founded this festival back in 1996, and we're here to bring really wonderful independent films to New Brunswick, New Jersey, as well as online, because our festival is still a hybrid. Films are available for 24 hours on their show date online, and there's in-person screenings in the evenings. And your ticket is good for both of them. And we do have a number of patrons who watch the film during the day and then come to the screening in the evening to interact with the filmmakers when they come to the show. The festival is taking place between May 31st and June 9th on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays at Rutgers University in the beautiful Voorhees Hall number 105. It's a university lecture hall that's been converted to do cinema. It has soundproofing, cushy chairs, a beautiful big screen, and a nice sound system, and is located at 71 Hamilton Street in New Brunswick, New Jersey. We're a block away from the New Brunswick train station, and a general admission ticket is $15. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Evie Metz and Nick Daly, who are below me. They are the makers of the film Judy's Garden. And then we have Sean Picknold, who's the director of Tennis, Oranges.
Thank you.
And he's in California, so he's up early because we're doing this in New Jersey on Zoom. So thanks so much for doing that, Sean. I know it's, filmmakers are late nighters, and I know getting up early is always a pain. So thanks so much for doing that. And Morgan Klambach is here. She's one of the festival judges, and she's going to help me ask some questions. So I get to ask the first one to you guys, and I wrote my questions down, and I should look at them. I love both of your films. The first question is always the most mundane. It goes to both of you. Tell us why you made this film. Ladies first.
I wanted to create an experience about life and death, to fundamental parts of existence that we all experience, but that can be so existential that it's difficult to wrap one's head around. And so this film reflects that by zooming in and out and constantly shifting perspectives to being as grand as the scale, outside, beyond Earth, kind of in outer space, something that we can at times become less connected to, and then it can zoom back into the microcosms of being down in the dirt with ants, which is also something that we can sometimes overlook. And by doing that, it hopefully encourages viewers to reflect on their own relationships to existence and life and death. And yeah.
Wonderful. Sean, tell us about your film.
Yeah, I had been thinking about doing a maybe proper animated short film several years, and I think the first kernel for this film was probably around 2016 when I visited the redwood forest in Northern California, and I was so struck by the beauty of it, and it felt like if there is a heaven or any sort of space you go after you die, that would probably maybe be close to what it was. At least for me, it felt like I have this strong connection to nature and the feeling of kind of bliss when you're immersed in it. I know that's not directly related to a vacuum quitting his job, but then my wife Adi and I, who's the production designer on the short, had our first animation studio on a quiet small road in Chinatown, LA called Chungking Road. And we met friends there, two of which inspired both the rabbit characters in the short. And they would, perform these perfect and beautiful actions every day of like walking slowly with canes and opening the community center and sitting and watching the cars go by and watching the sun pass through. And like they were so consistent, and we'd see them every day for 4 years and talk to them. And they ended up passing away in 2019 and 2020, which is when we started making the film, which was 2020. And I think it took about 3 years for us to make. And I think I like creating work like this that's uh, an exploration of, what it feels like to crave something more meaningful, to crave connection to another human.
Mm.
Even if you're a robot, a vacuum robot, I think it explores things that I think about, and especially during the pandemic, which became a very lonely time, a
Mm.
lot of isolation, and yeah, I think it for me is kind of a reflection of um, the what it similar, I think, to Evie, like what it means to live, and the trying to find a sense of beauty and calm in the fact that life doesn't last forever.
I mean, it's kind of crazy because we got these two films. They were on two different juries, but they share such kinship since they deal with, you know, aging and mortality. And I saw so many similarities in both of your films when I got to watch, Sean's film, which I absolutely adore as well. And uh, I guess you guys can talk to each other about your film. I guess I should cede to Morgan. Let her ask a question.
Hi, so my question was, um, both of the films have like really, really nice sets, and I think in like stop motion films, that's something that like really matters because um, yeah, a lot of the sets have just like a lot of like little intricacies, like especially with like tennis oranges, like the set of like the hospital and like the little room. And I was wondering what the process was for like designing the sets.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was um I also want to say that there was a hospital on the road that we had our animation studio on for many years. There was a hospital at the end of it. It was a small regional hospital that eventually, around the same time that our friends passed away, that hospital went out of business.
Huh.
And the nurses would stand outside of the hospital smoking cigarettes during their breaks, which I always was, these little things kind of maybe ended up a little bit into like the vacuum character, like not stoked on his job and wanting to quit. But so there was some visual inspiration from the actual real world environments that we knew. We were friends with the people at the community center, and we were able to interview them and be inside of it and take some photos. And we did a pretty, so we did renders in CG of like those sets. And because Adi is my wife, also an amazing production designer and like really expert with colors, she worked on, the colors of everything. And we had done this project for Netflix in February of 2020. It was also 3D stop motion. It was for a show called Song Exploder, which we animated like the REM song, Losing My Religion. And it was like 5 minutes of kind of simple, poetic 3D animation, stop motion. And we met a miniature artist through that project named Emily Franz, who's based in LA. And she was so incredible. She made this little vintage TV that was just, I was like, this is so good. And I'm admittedly not the best at making things. Like I always like defer to more talented people. I'm okay with clay and paper and things that are a bit sloppier for animation, but she was so good that I was like, can you help us make a short film next? We really want to make a 10-minute animated short film. She was like, okay. And then I was like, can you make puppets? And she was like, I could try. I've never made like crazy stop motion puppets. And she's like, I'll give it a try. And when she did, we were like, these are insane. You're so talented. And so like a bit of that and her miniature talent, a bit of 80s like expertise in color theory and set design. And then one other miniature artist, Megan Ross, who made like the oranges and the little vacuum and some of the very small things. We have some mahjong tiles that are tiny and so detailed that she's incredible. I was so impressed and lucky to be able to bring them in on this project and just build out this world, because I think that's what's interesting about Austin is you're creating a whole world, and you can't really let any small detail be like an afterthought, and you really have, because you're making it with hands. Um, so yeah, that was a bit of our process.
That's what I tell my students. Every little piece of information, everything is there for a reason in the film, and you got to make sure that you get rid of the stuff that's not feeding into what you want to say or show. So, Evie, go ahead.
Yeah, and even on that thought, it's interesting to consider how, for me, and it sounds like maybe similar to Sean's process, with animation, you're really starting from like an empty canvas. You're starting with nothing and you're adding in and building into that world and putting everything in bit by bit, which is different than, in contrast to film, maybe generally a filmmaker or photographer's process who has the whole world in front of them and is maybe removing things. Our process can be a lot more seen as additive. And for me, with the sets, throughout the film, it's primarily in one space that's kind of shifting. And it's rooted in some real like direct inspiration. Like, for instance, my dad's backyard is filled with fruit trees. And so I kind of grew up learning more about that. But even though it has sort of roots in those specific sources of inspiration, it's not in a real place. It doesn't have, actual existence beyond the sort of world building that I did. And so, for instance, like the fruit tree, I kind of started out being interested in making a particular type of fruit tree, but then I ended up painting them purple. And so it's not, anything actually real or factual. And I'm really interested in materials too, and being specific, but also pretty ambiguous. And so there's sort of like a wildness to the forestry where things are kind of like left untamed and more abstracted.
But I mean, the thing is, you both create these amazing worlds, and they all have this oral quality, as in sound, that embellishes the environments that you create. And so, could you tell us a little bit about the manipulation of sounds in your movie and music? Go ahead, Evie. And we can bring Nick in this way too.
Yeah, for us, we take the template of silent films and early cartoons from the 30s where music is continuous. Music moves with the action. And where also the action is more musical, almost more like a ballet where it's planned out to the bar sheets of music. For this in particular, it's always different film to film, but for this one, she gave me a completely silent film. And the way I approach it is, I map out, okay, just the sequences, like, old woman hosing for 20 seconds, inchworm descending from branch, 10 seconds. And then I'll start getting references, whether it's to specific styles of music, like Baroque music or klezmer or Chinese folk music, or certain styles that have moods, and I'll start piling on references for each sequence, and then from there investigating those references and trying to integrate them, and it becomes more intuitive after that.
Evie, did Nick have carte blanche? Was there anything you didn't like that he did?
Well, for both of our processes, even though, in some ways we have our individual roles where Nick does all the sound primarily and I handcraft everything and animate it, but we're constantly in conversation from the very beginning to the end, especially in terms of the scenarios and the stories, but even with the sound. So he'll start doing a little bit and then we'll listen back to it, and I am able to say, I think this is working and this isn't working, or I want it to sound more deep or be more high pitched or go against the actions or whatever it might be. And so it's not really a surprise to me entirely at the end, because we're constantly kind of in conversation while it's still being created.
Very cool, because I do that with my wife, and it looks like Sean does that with his too. Is that true? I mean, it seems like, well, tell us about the music and the sounds in your.
Well, just to say, I love the music that you guys made for your short. It's really amazing. So delightful and strange and moving, and it's important. I mean, I kind of started my directing and animation career, I guess, in music videos. So I was very used to like reacting to a song that already existed. And my brother is a lead singer of a band, and he would make music, and I would make animations for it. That was kind of how I started and got into it. And I loved having the restriction of one track. I liked the kind of maybe, similar to how you guys worked, but you're reacting to something and feeding off of the energy or the arc or the dynamic of something that exists. So it was actually a challenge for me with this short because I didn't have that. And I probably could have and maybe should have had a great composer friend score it, but for some reason I was like feeling like a lot of the inspiration was older. For me, it was from older worlds and maybe like digging into kind of something that maybe has been unearthed from the past. I don't know. When I make stuff, I feel like I want it to feel like something that maybe could have existed in like 1962. And I was searching for music and I knew there was this end dance sequence in the forest with the two rabbits. I didn't have the music, even though we had begun animation. And that's a scary thing because it is like with stop motion, it's helpful to have even the audio to work with to know how things are going to flow. So this is kind of sounds not so cool. And I know you guys are academics, but I was reading a book called A Concise History of Avant-Garde Music. And I'd heard Debussy before. I was a big fan, obviously, of him and Ravel, maybe the last 10 years, just that level of kind of French impressionistic classical music. And that song was prelude to The Afternoon of the Faun. I was reading about him and making it and kind of some of the inspiration. And I hadn't heard it. Maybe I've heard it before in things because it's popular. But when I listened to the swell at the end, I was like, I don't know, something kind of, it was like playing on the radio and I was like, oh, that feels like a good lift. And then some of the orchestration in it felt like it matched the sensitivities of the visuals. Like there's some beautiful instrumentation throughout that like, it's just, I think maybe would have been hard to recreate. So we kind of took that and we choreographed the dance scene to that song, which I didn't have rights to the song yet. But so we had that and I had the rough cut and then we kept working with it. It was a very hard song to edit because it is, this ballet piece that has, very specific parts and we couldn't use all of them. It didn't work to use all of the sections, but we kind of cherry picked and then added sound design. I worked with a sound designer in Berlin, this guy, David Camp, who's amazing. He does a lot of animated shorts in Europe. And he worked with Foley sound designers in Ukraine, Kiev, Ukraine, this was last summer, 2023. But there's this amazing Foley studio in Kiev that has been working through the last years of the war too. And they're Foley geniuses. And so they did all the delicate sounds and David kind of weaved the music and the sound design together. And I'm really happy. And we ended up getting rights to the song because in 2018, Debussy's work kind of entered the public domain. Yeah.
Very
Tip
cool.
for filmmakers if you're looking for something like that. But you still have to pay for the composition usage. But yeah.
Very cool. Morgan, please jump in.
So both of the films have such like beautiful colors. However, they also have like really dramatic color changes. So in like Judy's Garden, going from like different times of like Judy's life, and in Tennis Oranges changing from like the pastels to like the red and blue. I was wondering if you both could talk about like your decision behind this and what made you choose like the colors to switch from and the colors to like switch to.
Yeah, I'm glad that that's asked about because that is
Yeah, great question.
parts in both of our films.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you do that too, Sean. For me, in our film, the characters have no dialogue. So I'm constantly looking towards other forms of expression to communicate what the characters are experiencing. And so definitely lighting is one of those main sources of nonverbal communication. And so the lighting is constantly shifting, not only in terms of just the quality of light, but also the color of light to reflect the sort of emotional journey that the characters are on. And I think that's similar to the way that the sound works in the film as well. And then also the film is broken up into 3 parts. it begins with her as an older woman, and then it moves back in time to her youth, and then it ends with her as an infant. And so as a way to also signify the shifts of those different periods of time, lighting was a really critical way to kind of make each scene, even though it's based in the same space, feel very different. And so it's shifting between being more warm or being more cold at times as a way to also signify different times of day. But it's more so, I feel like the lighting is not, again, also rooted in reality, and it's really responding to what the character is experiencing.
Cool. Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up lighting too, because that is always one of my favorite things to do. I I get made fun of by like professional animators and DPs and stuff because I've for maybe 10 years of doing this, like I light with IKEA desk lamps that I got in 2009. Um, yeah.
You're not
They
alone.
made these like snake necked lights that if you like snoot them or put some black wrap on them, they're kind of the perfect animation lights. So for any budding animators, like use whatever you have around. You can still make things look beautiful, and making lighting and color like work together in harmony. I think was important for this film because that was what we saw when we were there. I mean, again, we were just absorbing this street for 4.5 years of it was our studio was called the Happy Lion, and it was an old art gallery, and we had a window, a huge window. So basically our view all day was the shifting light on that street. Because we're animators and we're designers, so we're there all day working, and just notice this way the afternoon light hits the beautiful colors on this street differently. All sorts of colors. Like that street was maybe a combination of like Hollywood set painters in the 1950s. It's a really interesting combination of textures and colors. So that was like direct inspiration for the color. But I wish Adie was here as well to speak about color, because she is very good at seeing which colors go together well, and she's a big fan of Joseph Alber's color theory and like the color contrast when two colors come together and how they change each other. So she was thinking a lot about that in the community center, and there's this beautiful like purple tone on the floor and then teal on the wall, which I think usually I don't. Maybe some people are like this. Like purple is like don't do purple, or and teal. You're like those are not normally the go-to colors. But if used in the right scale of those colors, it can actually be really really nice and calming and warm. And I think like we have there's a space scene that's kind of cold, and that was the idea, is it feels cold and empty. But then the forest like embracing, kind of coming back to the warmth and the feeling that I had in the big redwood forest, of just like this beautiful side afternoon light that makes it feel like you're being touched by the universe. And so that was it. And then the other thing about color is I'm always trying to get warm and cool to kind of rest together. And often if I'm working with like an illustrator, like we had an illustrator do our background, Sean Lewis, who's an amazing Toronto-based illustrator. My note for him usually is like red and blue. Like red and blue are my favorite colors, and when they come together, it's just something about it. And I think there's, not to get too philosophical, but like that's the, I don't know, color of like blood in your system is blue, right? And then when it hits the air, it becomes red. And like there's just something very primal about those two colors, and when they come together, they just kind of sing in a really beautiful way. So I tried to get that in where we could. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate the way that you guys talk about your film. There was obviously a lot of love that went into making them, and it shows in the final product. So you should be very, very proud. Your film scored really, really highly by our judges. I'd like to read you some of the judges' comments before I share screen and show folks how they can buy tickets. For Tennis and Oranges, this person wrote, I really adored this film. I got my interest in film through stop motion, and pieces like this made me adore the craft even more. Although the story was simpler, the set designs and overall cinematography were stunning. Even with little dialogue, the emotions were clear, and I loved how much thought and detail was put into the piece. This other person, also a woman, wrote, "This was a very cute, sad, nostalgic, and joyful short. An old man with trouble walking, able to dance again, and one last time with the help of a robotic vacuum." It goes on a little further. Another person wrote, another woman, "A visually pleasing film. The storyline was engaging as well. Overall, great job." Now for Judy's Garden, this was from
We got to get these on Letterbox, you guys. We got to get these reviews on
I can
Letterbox. These are
send them to
great.
you, no problem. And I have for Judy's Garden, this was from a woman, "A beautiful film, incredibly moving. The animation, sound, and other production values were very well done." And then I can tell you, "There is something magical about this film. A lot of heart and soul went into it. You can tell." And it goes on, but those are just a little bit of judges' comments for you guys. And like what I'd like to do now is share screen and show folks how they can buy some tickets. So as I share screen, and you don't need to see all that. I don't know how that happened. Today's been a strange day. All right, so normally you would go to njfilmfest.com, and that would be where everything normally would be. And by the way, if you do come, this is the location where we'll be showing your films in the background. That's Voorhees Hall. It's on the Rutgers University campus, adjacent to the Zimmerli Art Museum, which is the University Art Museum. But what you need to do is either scroll down or click Current Events, which will do the scrolling for you. And this is the holding pen for the festival. And since we're doing a hybrid, we've partnered with Eventive, which is our streamer. And so you absolutely must click on Buy Tickets, and that'll bounce you to our bona fide website. You can see the same image that's behind me. This is where you need to go. This is our welcome page. And each one of these buttons reveals something else. You should absolutely click every one of them. If you want to just roll down here on the welcome page, you can see basic information, driving directions, but you absolutely need to click on this blue link for parking if you want to take advantage of the free parking at our site. And then to show you around, the schedule page is very vanilla, and it has a listing of all the films and the dates they're playing on, the time and place. Everything is here. If you click on the menu button, it'll send you back to our welcome page. You click on Film Guide, and you can see blurbs and pictures about each and every film that we're showing. So if we want to see information about Judy's Garden, we can click on it right here, and you get basic information here. You can also click on the red button to get tickets this way. And if we work our way all the way down, we can see Tennis and Oranges, the poster for that, and some of the beautiful puppetry that was made for this film. So that's another place you can go. You can explore the menu this way, but I always go back to the menu page because the most important one is the tickets and screenings button. And there you can find out about how to buy tickets for this show. This is playing on June 2nd. I want to make sure I get the time right. It's the 5 o'clock show for in-person. All of the films are available online for the entire day. So you can start watching at 12 midnight, and you have till 11:59 to finish watching. Let's say you get up late and you start watching at 10:45 in the evening. You still have 24 hours to finish watching the program. So you just can click through. This is part of a shorts program. Your two animations are part of a shorts program that has about 8 films in it. And all of the films are really interesting. There's a lot of experimental stuff. There's a documentary about a guy who takes photographs off of a train. This is a kind of dramatic psychodrama. The Double Room is an experimental film. Use Your Words is another film that's kind of melodrama. Tennis and Oranges, Judy's Garden. And this is a very strange film about a man who gets stuck on a sex doll. It's a very strange film, but it's really brilliant in its own way. And so you can go back to the festival site. And the last 2 things I'll show you. If you want to see everything, you absolutely should buy the All Access Pass. It's basically half price. And it's only $120. You get to see 11 programs worth. Plus, we're doing concerts again, which is something I wanted to do. And Marissa Nadler's coming from, actually, she's not too far from where you guys are, Evie and Nick. You guys are in Virginia. Well, Marissa lives in Nashville. She's
great. I loved Marissa.
She's absolutely magnificent.
That's so cool.
She's a good friend of mine, and I convinced her to come, so I'm really excited about that. And so that's going to be on June 15th, which is after the competition part of the festival. I'm going to stop sharing.
That's cool. You guys are in Richmond. Is there a cool animation scene there now?
Yeah, there's quite a few different animators here, and also stop motion animators, to my surprise, which is always exciting because unfortunately there's not too many of us still.
Yeah.
So we're a bit scattered around.
I think I did do one stop motion animation film that I finished or I was starting to finish in 1999. Everything switched over to digital. I shot it in Super 8. And it's a cutout animation, you know, Terry Gilliam, Stan Vanderbeek kind of stuff. And then it just sat there for 20 years. So I finally finished it. So I'll share it with you when it's done, because
please.
I really like the process, but you gotta be a little bit crazy to work in stop motion. You have to.
You do. You have to be a certain kind of crazy.
Yes, it's a nice thing though. It's a little bit like goalkeepers in soccer. You know, you have a special breed that can play a role. But I want to say thank you to all of you for participating in our Q&A. And are you guys going to come? I don't think Sean is going to come because he's too far away. He's in California.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out. I should know in the next maybe a week and a half, because it may coincide. We're going to go to Europe
and you can
just after that.
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Yeah,
it'd be lovely to meet you. We would love to have you there. We always have a good Q&A session, as Morgan can attest to.
Will you guys be there as well?
Trying to see if we can make it, if I can make it work with my work schedule and making it.
Yeah, it's like from where you guys are, it's probably a 6 or 7 hour drive. So
yeah,
not too bad.
Oh, that's nothing.
Yeah, come on down. Anyway, I thank you so much for being part of the Q&A. Morgan, thank you so much for helping me ask the questions.
Thank you, and thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, thanks so much. You guys enjoyed.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really great to share the work with receptive audiences, and I think it's not easy to program shorts and to make festivals like happen and be successful. So thank you guys for making it happen and curating a cool group.
Both of your films are amazing, and we're really proud to show them. We only show good stuff and great stuff, actually. And
also, there's such a warmth and personable quality, Al, that you bring, that you and the entire team bring
Oh,
to the
thank you so
festival.
much.
Really
Thank you. It's very important to me to treat filmmakers the right way. We're not a glitzy festival. We're very grassroots. The minute that it becomes corporate, I'm out of here. But the good news is that I've been running this festival for almost 30 years, so I'm very proud of it. So
that's amazing.
thanks, you guys. Enjoy the day. I'm going to stop the recording.